Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new conversation with Age in Spain. Today we have Brad with us, and the topic will be everything that happens after you have already sent in your documents to the immigration office. So, what to expect, which issues may occur at the beginning or at the end of the process, what you might be asked for from the immigration office. We will be going through the whole process and treating each of the issues individually, so hopefully we can get an answer. Before starting, however, I will go through the main lines of the whole process. As you know, a residency application starts by accumulating a certain amount of documents. The most important part of the form is the health insurance in case you don't have an S1 form or you're not working. The financial means that under the scope of the withdrawal agreement are around 5,600 euros, and well, the administrative fee is not asked for the later process, but yes, if you're applying in 2021, something that is very important is presenting a set of supporting documents that show that you are indeed under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. Which documents can be those? For example, utility bills, medical bills or visits. If you have a son or a child who is in school, so the inscription to that school, anything that can show continued residence, as well as a medical insurance that show that since you started living in Spain, you were medically covered and therefore your stay was lawful. Otherwise, there might be some issues in certain areas of the territory. Now, why to do the exchange? We've seen many times that we also heard from the FCDO at the beginning, back in some months ago, that it wasn't that necessary. The green card was still valid equally in terms of the rights provided by both residency documents. However, we've seen in the last weeks and months that at a local level, where information does not flow so continuously, there are starting to be some discrepancies between which document is accepted and which one is not. We're seeing that some services are now being provided only to those who hold a TA, while the green card is being relegated to an outdated document, a document that is not anymore valid. That, in theory, is not true. In theory, you can still hold on a green card, but the TA card, the biometric card, is and will become more useful as time goes on, as local authorities discard that EU certificate, that old EU certificate, for this new card that shows exactly what's your status. A kind reminder that this TA card shows that you are under the scope of the withdrawal agreement, while the green certificate, which is a flimsy paper card, shows that you're still an EU national. So as you can imagine, not everyone is on the same page in terms of what's going on at the higher level of negotiations, so we advise doing the exchange as soon as possible. Now, I submitted my application for residency. Then what? Brad, what can you tell me about what's next once you've sent all the documents and then you're waiting?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the conversation with Agent Spain today, Mark. So yeah, as Mark just said, once you submit all of those different types of documents that you have to prove that you meet the requirements for residency in Spain, what happens next? So there's two ways that you can present your residency application. So you can either do it in person at one of the immigration offices, which are located in most of the major cities across Spain, or you can do it online. Um, using a digital certificate or with someone doing it on your behalf using their digital certificate, which we talked about in the last Facebook Live. And so what should happen once you've actually submitted and you made the application? The first thing that should happen is that you should receive a document, which is called the Recibo de Presentación. And basically it's just a receipt or a confirmation of your application. It's a really important document because it proves that you have an application in process. and it also outlines important bits of information like your número de expediente, which is useful for tracking your application. And it also tells you exactly which documents you submitted if it's going to be contested later. And it also tells you, other key things like when the application was submitted, and things like that. So it's really important that you make sure that you get some kind of proof of your application being submitted as kind of the first thing to do when you've submitted your application. Okay, so the Spanish government was saying that it can take up to 3 months to process an application, but we're seeing that in many areas of Spain, including the Baleares, including the Canaries, it's actually taking around 4 to 6 months to process an application. We can understand why this is happening because there's been COVID, there's been restrictions, lockdowns, all this type of stuff. And also there's been a large volume of people that are actually applying for residency as well. So you need to remember that the immigration office is not just for British people, is not just there for Brexit. It's an immigration office for anybody that's trying to migrate to Spain as well. So it's not just Brits going there, and it's not just because of Brexit. The delays are happening. It's happening to everybody who's applying for residency in Spain. Okay.
Yeah, I heard that in the Balearic Islands, there are some cases that waited almost 10 months, right? It's incredible how this could
Yeah.
happen, right?
Yeah,
So
obviously that's an extreme case, and it hasn't been
very
happening to
extreme.
everybody. But
Yeah,
yeah, we are seeing the waiting times are
yeah,
4 to 6 months. Not for every region, but yeah, for a lot of regions as well. Yeah.
yes.
And
So
then, so the last thing just to mention on that one is that if you did submit your application in person, then the way that the immigration office is going to notify you is by post, and by the address that you listed in section 3 of the EX20 form, which is the application form to apply for residency. And if you submitted your application online via a digital certificate, then you'll receive the notification digitally via the digital certificate as well.
yeah, it's incredible, and yeah. So basically, that limit that they write down on the resolution, that the maximum that it can take is 3 months. Remember, whoever is watching, it's not applicable. It can take longer. Usually, it takes actually longer. And if after 3 months after submitting your application you don't get a notification, it doesn't mean that it was denied, because they make reference to that, to the silencio administrativo, administrative silence. It means that usually in a normal world where they comply with their timeframes, after 3 months it would mean that your application was denegated. But that's not the case anymore. Applications pretty much in every region take longer, so do not worry after for waiting a bit more. You will always receive a resolution.
I'll just say that well, I'm based in Catalonia, and there's a few regions here that have actually been very quick. So, for instance, Tarragona has been doing the applications under the 3 month kind of time period as well. So it's not everywhere in the country, but if you don't hear anything within 3 months, don't be worried because there are significant delays.
Great. And once you send this document, can you check how it is evolving, the status of your application? Is there a way to track your progress so you kind of know when you get the resolution?
Yeah, exactly. So there's 3 ways that you can actually track the status of your application. So it's a pretty basic tracking system, and it doesn't give you a lot of information, but at least that you can see that it's in the system, and you have some basic information about kind of what's actually going on. So there's a phone number that you can call to check the status, which is 902 02 2222. I'll just repeat that again. So it's 902 02 2222. Okay. And when you call up, you'll be asked to provide some specific details about your application. So you might be asked to provide your NIE number or the número de expediente, which is the number that's listed on recibo de presentación, and you'll be asked to provide your date of birth and the date that you submitted your application as well. Okay. You can also check it by SMS, and you can send again some of those details that I just mentioned via SMS, and they'll give you some information about the status of your application. But probably the quickest and easiest way to do it is actually by checking online. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'll show you the system that they use to that you can use to be able to check the status of your application. So if you're interested, just contact Agent Spain either via phone number or our email address, residency@agentspain.org, and we'll happily pass over the link to you. But once you kind of get to the web page, it will look like this. You need to scroll down to the bottom and click the big red button. And then it's going to take you to a page like this. So if you did submit your application online using a clave or digital certificate, you can check the status here, but you also receive notifications in your clave or digital certificate. And if you submitted it in person, then you just need to select this one, Consulta con formulario, and then it will ask you to put in some of your details here. So not everybody has an NIE number. So if you don't have an NIE number, then you just need to click on this little green text here, and it will allow you to enter your número de expediente instead of the NIE number. And then, yeah, so once you've entered those, you just click no, I'm not a robot, and consulta, and it gives you some bits and pieces of information about your application. And one of them will be the status of the application, okay? And there's a few different statuses that you can potentially have. So the key ones that we see are en tramite, which means in process. So if you see that, it means that they're still assessing the documents that you presented and they haven't made a decision yet. We have resolución favorable, which is a favorable resolution, which is very good, and it means that your residency has been accepted, and you can move on to the second step. Although you do need to wait for the favorable letter to arrive in the mail or be available with your digital certificate before you can apply for the TIE, but at least you know that your application was successful. We also see trámite requerido, which means that the immigration office will be in touch with you to ask you to provide more documentation. And again, they'll either send you a letter in the post or it'll be available on your digital certificate, and it will clearly outline which documents that you need to present or which parts of the requirements for residency that you didn't meet. The other last two that we might see, so we might see archivado, which means that they already asked you for documents, but you didn't present them within the 10 days, or they weren't the documents that the extranjería was looking for. And the last one you might see is a resolución desfavorable, which means that you don't meet the requirements under the withdrawal agreement. You didn't show enough proof of living in Spain before the end of 2020, and the application has been denied immediately.
Thank you, Brad, for this overview. Just to go a bit more in detail, for example, let's say that you send in your documents and then you realize that you missed one of them. As Brad commented, you will be asked for them, and this is done in the form of what they call a requerimiento. Basically, you will receive a notification. If you applied with the digital certificate, it will be online. And if you didn't apply with the digital certificate, so you went to the office, you will receive a certified letter that you will have to sign upon reception. And that letter will contain a text that usually is quite complicated to understand because it's written in this legal language, a Spanish language, but basically you need to look at what's the document missing, what is the common ones? Well, the common ones can be the medical insurance, or maybe they request for a specific document detailing that your medical insurance does not have any excess or copayments. They can also request that you provide more evidence to support your financial means. Let's say that you provided bank statements, but in those bank statements you forgot to add the page that shows your name, therefore showing the ownership of the account. So they might ask you that. Or they are also lately, since now we're in 2021, they are asking a lot for proof of continued residency. So let's say that you arrived in October 2020 and you apply in June 2021. So they will ask you for some documents, a set of documents that prove that during all these months in between those two dates, you've been effectively living in Spain and you're not a swallow or a tourist that comes and goes and wants a residency. Pretty much the requirement is to sort out these kind of issues.
Yeah, and I mean, we just can't stress enough the importance of reading the document. And if you don't speak, fluent Spanish, it's really important that you do get a native or a fluent Spanish speaker to read it, because it's really specific, and there can be, things on there that you might not notice that a native Spanish speaker will notice, and can make the difference between your application being denied or accepted as well. So we can't stress enough the importance of that. And if you have had a request for more documents, you can contact our helpline, and we're more than happy to look at the letters, and provide you with information about what is required and what's being requested from the government as
Yeah.
well.
Also, a brief introduction here, unrelated. If any of you who are watching have a question about what to do after sending in the documents, or even other parts of the residency process, access to healthcare, any of this kind, feel free to comment on the video comments. So we, at the end of the session, will go through them and we will try to answer them in the best of our possibilities. With this said, I believe, yeah, maybe we can go a bit more onto detail on the appeals route, which is what usually a person thinks about when they receive a flat-out rejection. Let's
Yeah.
say you receive the letter from the immigration office, not with an archive, but with a rejection that gives you 15 days to leave the country. In this case, what usually can be done still is the appeal. It is important to note, however, that in order to appeal, you will most likely need the help of a professional lawyer, because it requires you to submit a set of documents that are very precise in terms of language, that take into account all the proof that you provided during the whole residency process. And therefore, in this case, we would advise that you hire professional help for this part of the process. Also, another thing is that even though the notification for you to leave the country says 15 days, if you decide to appeal, then you will be able to stay in Spain while the appeal process is going on. So it is also a way to extend your stay and gives you time while you process this.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing to mention is that if your application is denied, like initially, without asking to provide any additional documents, again, they will send you an official letter stating the reason why. And again, it's really important to read that, and to get a native Spanish speaker to read that, or agent Spain to read it, because it can provide you with some information about why the application has been rejected. Um, if if your application is unsuccessful, so let's say that you submitted additional documents and the application was then archived because they weren't the documents that the government actually requested. Um, we would say that if you have more proof or additional documents to add to what you originally submitted, then you can actually resubmit the entire application. Okay. But if you don't have any additional information or additional documents to add to your application, then there's not really any point of resubmitting. And we would recommend that you would go down the kind of appeal, the appeal channels. And yeah, exactly like Mark said, we would recommend that you seek legal and professional advice for that. Because yeah, it does go through the courts system here in Spain, and it does require knowledge and knowledge of the law and on some of the legal things that are behind it all as well. So yeah, and again, if your application is archived, we cannot stress the importance enough of reading the information in the letters that the Spanish government said, because they can help you to figure out why it was declined, and if there is a possibility of resubmitting, or if you actually have a good chance of beating an appeal, or of having a successful appeal as well.
Yeah. I think we can go through some of the questions that are coming in. Let's start with Carol. Hello, Carol. Thank you for watching. The question is, have you any news regarding UK citizens with Spanish COVID certificates going to UK having to isolate for 10 days? Yes, I believe I have a question. As far as we're concerned, in the UK, the only people who are free of quarantine when coming to the UK are those who had COVID vaccinations from the NHS. So if your vaccine didn't come from the NHS, if it came from the Spanish Social Security, you will have to do quarantine for now. However, I want to say that the UK authorities are trying to work on this, and sooner or later, most likely we will have an agreement that will allow also for people coming from the US and from other EU countries to also avoid quarantine. But for now, yes, you have to quarantine if you don't have a COVID vaccine from the NHS. The second question comes from Tony Upton Brown, and he's asking, what about appeal? I was told 3 months, which is now up. I presume, Tony, you talk about the 3 months waiting period after sending in the documents. As we mentioned before, in many regions of Spain, the waiting time for the resolution is way longer, so I wouldn't worry too much if you just exhausted those initial 3 months. Let us know if we got your question right, and if not, we will answer it.
But yeah, I've heard that in different parts of the country, that if you have submitted an appeal, they will contact you regarding the appeal. It's not the silence, administration of silence that Mark mentioned before. That yeah, if you have submitted appeal, they do need to contact you.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate, as Mark said, you can remain legally in the country whilst your appeal is being processed. Yeah, just make sure that you have the proof of the appeal being submitted again. Yeah, so that you can legally remain in the country and you have proof if you're questioned or if you're asked.
Mm.
And another thing just to mention is that we we don't recommend that you leave the country whilst a residency application is in process, and particularly whilst an appeal is in process as well, because at any point they can get in contact with you, they can ask you to present new documents, they can request information or to talk with you. So it's not advisable to leave the country whilst an application or an appeal is being processed.
Yep, I think you already half answered the next question from Susie,
Okay.
who is asking, can you travel back to the UK whilst awaiting an application decision? As Brad said, not advisable, because you can be sent a requerimiento and then you can miss it, and then everything from there goes down, because whenever you're missing a document, for example, you are only given 10 days to submit those documents. A real case that we had in our helpline is a person that sent in all the documents and immediately flew to the UK right before the lockdown of COVID. What happened? that a requerimento came asking for an updated version of the padrón. It was nothing serious, but he was away and couldn't come in time to send it. And he then had to do the whole initial submission again. And it was not even a serious thing. It was not about an insurance. It was not about sufficient means. It was just about a silly document like the padrón can be that wasn't updated. As you know, it has to be less than 3 months old. So we recommend to stay. Because the immigration office also understands that this is your residency, sorry, your residence, that Spain is your residence, that you just came and you're starting your process, and therefore any movements before you obtain residency can be seen as a detriment. It's not necessarily something that will affect your application, but we just do not advise to be safe.
Yeah. And just to follow on from that, like we're aware that there are cases where people need to go back to the UK. They need to go, funerals, weddings. They have other commitments and stuff as well. So whilst we say it's not advisable, if you do need to travel for a certain reason, it's advisable to take your recibo de presentación, so the confirmation of your application when you go, so you can show them when you return to Spain that you have that ongoing application. And we would also recommend to take other documents such as the padrón or rental contracts, deed to houses and things like that, because you may be asked to provide these kinds of things when you enter the country again. Yeah, so just be aware to take as much proof as possible of your application when you leave, but we don't recommend leaving the country unless you
Exactly.
really have to.
If it's for a week, then yes, there are always situations that require you to leave the country, and of course, they are more or less observed in the regulations. And as long as you take proof that you're applying for residency, everything should be fine, especially if you're within the 90-day period of allowed Schengen travel, right? Okay, on to the next question. Max is asking, my residency application was submitted in March 2021. The solicitor who submitted my application did so using his own digital certificate. This solicitor has left the practice. How easy it is to change this to another solicitor in the practice? Thank you. Well, that's a complicated situation, Max, because first of all, we should look into which type of digital certificate did your solicitor use, because usually gestores, lawyers, solicitors use a special type of digital signature, which is for gestorías. But since we started our project in Age in Spain, we've seen that many individuals that call themselves solicitors use their personal digital certificate to do these procedures and earn some money, and they are not necessarily professionals or experts in the immigration area, and this has led to some uncomfortable situations for some UK nationals trying just to straightforward apply for residency. I don't think it's easy to change it. I don't know if it is even possible. You will definitely need the help of this person to finish the application or to start a new one, because now your application is under his ID and he's your representative. So in the immigration system, you are there, but he's representing you. So this needs to get to be finished. I think our advice would be to contact him as soon as you can, at least for him to try to finish the application if he's already out of practice.
Exactly, or at least to get the details of your application as well, because he'll have important things like your número de expediente and other bits of information that are going to be essential for you to try to change it if it's possible. So the easiest route would be to contact the lawyer and to try to talk to them and tell them that you need the information, and if they do get any notifications, that they send the letters to you immediately.
Yeah, definitely. It is strange that a lawyer, a gestor, solicitor uses his own personal digital certificate if working at a firm or an office, because of precisely of these situations. What happens if the person leaves the practice, right? Tony replies to us saying, "Thank you. I used a lawyer for the appeal and it's been 3 months since the appeal was sent back, but I feel you have answered it. Thank you." Yeah, appeals can take a long time. Do you remember, Brad, when we were talking with our colleagues from IOM that appeals were taking a really long time to be resolved? Yeah, in this case, your lawyer will know.
Exactly, and I guess it's the same thing with the large volume of applications that the immigration office are receiving for residency. There's a lot of people that are also um, receiving unfavorable resolutions that are appealing the decisions. And again, with all of the restrictions, lockdown, etc., due to COVID, there's already a backlog with the additional, increase of applications as well. So I just say, Tony, just wait until you hear something from your lawyer regarding the application, and don't be worried that it's taking more than 3 months.
Yes. And if any of the people who are watching has already a NIE, which is the identity number that you can get before you even get residency, for example, when you want to open a bank account, just let you know that you can obtain this digital signature and then do the whole application process yourself from your own computer without the need of any appointments. Everything is much faster and all the notifications come directly to your email. They send you an email that with a link that you can click, and it leads you to the page where it shows all the information regarding your application. So we highly advise, if you have the possibility, because we know that a lot of people that want residency do not have this number. But if it's possible, if you have this NIE, we really advise getting the digital certificate, Certificado Digital. We have a guide on our website as well, so to make the process as seamless as possible.
And we also did a Facebook Live where I explained the
Yeah,
process as well, in quite a lot of detail as well. So if you have a look on our Facebook page, you can see
exactly.
that presentation as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, just one thing that I forgot to mention as well is another thing that's really important when you initially submit your application and you get the recibo de presentación is that normally they assign you a temporary NIE number um, to, to kind of identify you whilst you're going through the process as well. So if you do get the recibo de presentación in person, it should have your temporary NIE number listed on it. And whilst you're waiting for your residency to be approved, you can use that number for certain things, but just be aware that if your residency is declined, then it's not going to be valid. But it's helpful for people that are trying to start things off and to get things kind of like rolling with their life in Spain. In that way as well. So just another reason why it's really important to make sure that you get the recibo de presentación. And it's unfortunate for Max that he didn't get that. Or sorry, I'm assuming that he didn't get that from the person that was helping him. But it's another reason why it's really important that if you are paying someone to do it on your behalf, that you make sure that you get all of the relevant documentation, so that you actually have control of the application and you can actually understand what's going on and have your número de expediente, temporary NAE number, and all the other things that are kind of associated with it as well.
That's right. Yes, and also we know that here we're telling a lot of information. Also, the questions contain a lot of information in our answers. So just make sure that if you, after this live session, you want to rewatch something that we said, all our sessions get recorded and uploaded in our Facebook page. You can see also the session that Brad did for the digital certificate, where he goes through all the process. I encourage you to see all those videos because they contain very valuable information. Now, going back to the comments, I see Susie asks another question, and she says, I came to live here in 2019, went to the UK at the beginning of 2020 to sell my house in the UK, and got stuck because of COVID. Only arrived back having sold my house in June this year. Will this affect my application? I have a rental contract from 2019. It might, Susie, because while you came to live in 2019, you didn't request for residency then, and then you left the country also for a very long amount of time. Kind reminder that while you have a temporary residency, the longest time that you can leave the country in a 12-month period is 6 months. In this case, you didn't have residency and you left the country for longer time. So in the eyes of the administration, Spain was not your residency, right? So yeah, personally, we don't think that this is a good factor in favor of your application, but depending from the area you're applying from, also applications can be easier or harder. Um, Remember, Brad, in the Canaries is pretty hard right now, but on the other hand, we have other regions where people is going through with applications in a much easier way. So
Exactly.
it
And
all
I would,
depends.
yeah, and I definitely encourage Susie to contact the helpline as well, because we can give you some information about,
Mm.
kind of what's required and what is considered proof of living in Spain. Um, and potentially, you may have some of those documents to show.
Mhm.
But yeah, as Mark said, it's probably not going to be favourable on on your application. But yeah, contact the helpline, give the number a call, or send us an email, or fill out our inquiry form on the website, and then we can provide you with some more additional information regarding your specific case as well,
Mhm.
because we may need more information to be able to understand it better too.
Yes, it sounds like you may not be able to request residency under the withdrawal agreement, but having sold your property in the UK, you probably are eligible to the non-lucrative visa, which is another road for Spanish residency for all those UK nationals and also third country nationals that are not under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. So there are still options, and we don't want here to bring down the hope of people applying for residency. It's just that requirements will change as time goes on for third country nationals. They are a bit more strict, a bit more boring to deal with, but options are still there, and we encourage you to come. Send us an email, filling an inquiry form, give us a call, and ask questions because if you want to live in Spain, you can definitely find one way or another a way to enter into the system right now. We don't know about the future though. Okay, so it seems that there are no more questions for now, and we went through the topics we wanted to talk. Is there anything else, Brad, that you want to mention before we
Yeah,
finish?
well, yeah, I'd just like to say that at the moment we're running a campaign. It's called Be a Good Neighbor. And basically, what we're asking you to do is if you meet somebody that's British, if you know somebody that's British, um, if you live next door to someone that's British, so the lady down the road is British, we just want you to ask them two simple questions. We want you to ask them, do you have residency in Spain? And if they don't, do they know about Age in Spain and that it's a free confidential service? Um, and please pass on our contact details to them. Um, the project that we're running is a limited project, so it will end at some point. Um, and we would encourage people who don't have their residency sorted yet, who are having issues, to try to contact us as soon as possible, so they can have the help and support and the guidance of our wonderful volunteers and staff at Age in Spain during their process, because it's not going to be around forever, unfortunately, our support. And we want to make sure that as many UK nationals, particularly those that may not be able to submit their applications by themselves or might need extra support, that they have all of that guidance and support available to them now. And the longer that you leave applying for residency, the more difficult that it's going to be to prove all of the requirements as well. So apply as soon as possible. And if you know anybody who hasn't made the application yet, please let them know about Age in Spain, and we can assist them to make sure that they have all the correct documentation and approvals to be able to live in Spain.
That's right. And thank you very much, Brad, for hopping into this session and giving your insight on the whole residency process. We never have enough of information because it can get so complex, and with time it changes as well. So it's always to have small recaps, right, in the form of these sessions. Just a reminder for everyone who joined the session a bit later that this whole session will be available as a video in our Facebook page. So if you missed a part, if you had a question, I know Susie had a question, then she missed it. You can just rewatch the video and go to the minute where you were replying to your question, and you can find your answers this way. Thank you very much for coming, and have a nice afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Mark.